Welcome to Marvel Source. I'm Bifna, and today we're looking at Hawkeye. With the first 2 episodes on Disney Plus, it's only fitting that I look at the first issue, which the series is pretty much based off of, which has a lot of very obvious similarities, but a lot of changes that they had to adapt for the show. Even the logo for the comic is pretty much the same one for the show. And for anyone who hasn't watched the Hawkeye show yet, this is a spoiler warning for you. You have your chance to get out of here now. And right off the bat on the first page, you get that familiar fadeaway shot while Hawkeye's falling backwards, shooting a grappling arrow, just like we saw in the Avengers movie and Kate Bishop saw from her apartment when she was watching through the broken wall. But unlike this show where he swings into a building and lands maybe a little bit hurt from the glass and just the general impact, on this, that doesn't happen. He just falls right down to the ground, landing on a car, even so much as referencing that, hey, the other Avengers have powers and whatnot, but I'm just a guy. Hurt so much so that he ends up in the hospital with what looks like a lot of damage. And about 6 weeks later, he's out of the hospital, almost fully recovered. And he's been aching to get out of the hospital for so long, but I don't like how he describes the air in New York, where that baked summer scent of hot garbage, wet penny, and peas, and you can get a smell of fresh air in there somewhere. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't for a second think I could smell that smell, and I did not like it one bit. But as soon as he's free from the hospital, he gets out of his wheelchair and just kicks it to the curb, technically in the middle of the road, but he's been wanting to do that for a while. He's just gonna go home and sleep. Cutting quickly to a new scene where it's nighttime and Clint is just at a vet with this poor dog flopped on the table, wanting these guys to save him. Doctors and nurses rushing around this dog, barking out orders as they ask Clint what happened. Clint just standing there with his 5-mile stare. Snapping back to reality while he's still in that same 5-mile stare, someone else asking him what happens. It seems to be the nurse that was wheeling him out at the beginning of the series, and he had just been caught kicking that wheelchair into traffic. That's like a $200 wheelchair, and he is not happy about it, just cussing him out. But Hawkeye's not fazed. She's like, yeah, bill me whatever. As he's getting in the cab, the nurse still swearing him up and down, trying to get where he's going on the cheap. He has a little moment of thinking, yeah, even though he's an Avenger, he has no superpowers, which is a big differentiating factor between Hawkeye and the other Avengers like Thor and Iron Man, who kind of have a little bit more of a power to them, with armor for Iron Man and god power for Thor. Hawkeye's just a guy with a bow. But so much for being cheap, because in typical New York fashion, there is a traffic jam. The cab driver was, hey bud, what can you do? Clint just gets out of the car. He has some fresh new legs. He's gonna go for a walk. Everybody else in traffic just swearing up a storm. Clint whistling along, walking by this fenced off area. This looks like a pretty rougher side of town. Not too bad, but definitely not top class. And this is where the comic and the show differs. Clint lives in these grungy apartments, but in the show it's Kate, because Clint has his family and his wife out west, nice little farmhouse, and he had brought his kids to New York City to enjoy the city for the Christmas holidays. He doesn't actually live in New York other than when he's doing stuff for the Avengers if need be. Mentioning how people don't really recognize him around this part of the city, even though he is an Avenger. They recognize him sometimes. In the show, he's recognized all the times. They're pretty famous in the MCU. But off to the side, Clint hears some Spanish and is clearly concerned. Turns out it's eviction day for one of the families in the complex he lives in. And the landlords of this building are the Russian Tracksuit mafia. That is the same mafia that's in the Disney Plus show. So you start to see how the show and the comics are extremely similar in a lot of ways. Clint trying to convince Ivan, the landlord, not to kick these guys out and threaten killing them in front of their kids. And I love how they talk, always saying bro, like, bro, back off, this not concern you. And this guy's just pure evil by tripling the rent. That could be extremely high, and in a place like this, that's not warranted. But again, Clint is trying to fight this. He gets the lease from Ivan and reads it, and it's pretty much confirmed, hey, they can kind of do this. He owns the building. I guess he can. It sucks, but he can. Then we get another flash to this vet clinic where Clint's just waiting for the doctors to be done. They say they need to talk to him about his dog, but he says it's not his dog. So where'd this dog come from? The doctor explaining to him that the dog is losing a lot of blood. He's in shock and is a difficult surgical candidate, and that euthanizing him is not inhumane at this point. But Clint snaps at the doctor and tells him, you gotta do what you gotta do to make that dog better. And the doctor will do the surgery. He's not against that, but he has Clint thinking, are you doing this for the dog or are you doing this for you? And Clint has a moment to calm down here, just telling the doctor, hey, fix the dog, and that he's sorry that he snapped at him. Again, flashing to a more present time when all the tenants are on the roof. It's become a ritual for them to be up here on the nice nights as they barbecue and have a bit of a potluck going on. Just talking about the Tracksuit Mafia and what they're doing with the building, it's rumored that they sold it for $10 million. And I want to point out the guy doing the barbecuing, his name is Grills because he's grilling. And in the show, they had a character named Grills, which was a LARPer that took the Ronin suit and wore that and posted it on Instagram. His name was Grills, a completely different character to what's in the book. Hawkeye hanging out with his neighbors, trying to flick a coin at the bottle and break it. They're betting him that he can't. He doesn't. They're laughing at him. Then continues to talk about what's going on with the building. It's in the lease. They can't change that. Hawkeye's just like, yeah, well, money's money. It's the hassle of moving stuff. While one of the older lady neighbors that are up there says it's just money, must be nice, as if kind of mocking him because probably not everyone in this building has that Avengers money. Hawkeye having a moment of reflection as you get this blue box that is uncharacteristic to the rest of the page, asking if the dog can be pet. Bringing us forward in time a little bit later, you see the dog here that's similar to the one he was bringing to the vet, standing with the Tracksuit Mafia, showing it was Clint that wanted to pet the dog, but these Mafia guys are like, bro, he'll bite you. Finding out the dog just wants a pizza. Again, with the similarities in the show where the dog that Kate saves is very much in love with pizza. These Mafia guys trying to get Clint to just keep moving on, but Clint opens up a bag full of money, hearing that there's a casino in this building and he wants in on it, working his way through the front door all the way to the back in this hidden cellar. But Clint walks into a room that's a lot less like a casino and more of just an underground room in a Chinese joint where a whole bunch of creeps play cards. One random guy on another table mentioning that it's a family game, and Clint doesn't match the rest of the family in here, being Russian or Asian. But he pinpoints Ivan in the crowd and says, I don't play cards, but I do spend money. Slamming his bag of money on the table, disrupting all the cards and chips, telling him that this is the rent money for the entire building. Picking up a deck of cards and shuffling it while he's explaining to Ivan that this money should cover it, but Ivan's having none of it. He's like, maybe it's not your place, bro, to spend money like this. Clint's still shuffling the cards, warming his fingers up and bending the cards a little bit to break them because you kind of get this idea that he's ready to fight if need to, and he's that good that he's going to use cards to do it. But Ivan, he wants the building empty. He doesn't want the money. He's like, so you know what? I don't want it. I don't accept your cash. But Hawkeye, he wasn't asking. I love this sequin of motion. You see him with the ace of spades, and he starts with the wrist motion as it flings out of his hands. He recognizes Tracksuit on his right is drawing a weapon. He hits one of them in the neck with the card with looks like a lot of force as he elbows the other guy that was about to shoot him. As complete chaos erupts in the room, tables getting flipped, people getting knocked over, Clint hitting Tracksuit guys, but then you see this bottle rise in the air and hit Clint in the head. And this comic is all over the place where they flash back to being in the veterinary clinic. Clint is passed out in the chairs in the waiting room waiting for the dog among the other clients, as well the Tracksuit Mafia guys have tracked him down though into this vet. They come in, they waken him up by yelling bro at him. Taking us on this roller coaster through the comics, we're flashback to the casino now where he's getting thrown out of the main window of the store as the other Tracksuit Mafia members join them, guns drawn. Clint starts booking it down the alleyway. He's doing the math in his head. He's 30 yards away from cover and he just has to make it there, but they have guns and so he's skeptical. And we see the gun go off, clipping Clint in the shoulder. That probably hurt, but it's not fatal. He looks back, he sees the dog biting the Tracksuit Mafia's arm to protect Clint. Clint just looking at him, turning around. He should be running in the other direction, but when you see a dog get kicked, you stop and you help. The dog falling into the water in the middle of the street, oncoming cars as Clint winds up and punches both of the Mafia guys. But the dog is still in the middle of the road, hurt, and people don't see him that are driving by. They don't expect the dog to be in the middle of the road. Clint rushing into his pocket to try and find anything to save this dog. He finds a coin and he flicks it perfectly right through the driver that's about to hit the dog. Just not hurting the driver, but scaring him enough to steer off to the side. Clint closing his eyes, hoping nothing else really bad happens and this dog doesn't get hit. He did what he could. Then suddenly, waking up in the vet, staring face to face with the Tracksuit Mafia as they hunted him down to the vet. He doesn't miss a beat and he's instantly up, kneeing one of the guys in the nuts and punching the other while forcing Ivan back into the wall, looking like he did a lot of damage with that push, ready to punch him. Onlookers just terrified about what's going on, Clint reassuring him that I'm the Avenger, and this guy with the cat being like, are you Iron Fist or something? Which I can see where they make that mistake. Hawkeye and Danny Rand would be very similar in this situation without Hawkeye's outfit on. You could assume that this was Danny Rand. And it looks like Ivan is leaving willingly, Clint putting him in the back of a cab, being such a Karen, talking about his rights, and that it was fair for him to do it because it was in the lease. It's tough luck for them, which, he's not wrong, doesn't make him any less of a jerk. But Clint is fired up. He's talking about Captain America and how when you're around him, when you're with him all the time, you just want to be a better person. He makes that come out in people. And he's like, look, Ivan, look around. Captain America ain't here. And if that doesn't strike fear into Ivan's heart, then I don't know what will, because Clint is a total baller in this moment. He's going to pay what everyone in the building owes for rent, and he's going to buy the building for $12.5 million, I assume, and that it's not negotiable. Ivan says he already has a buyer, but Clint doesn't care. He wants that guy out of here, as the doctor shows up to give him an update on the dog. Apparently the dog had a broken pelvis, broken legs, and 2 broken ribs, and he lost an eye. And in comparison, in the show, the dog is saved by Kate Bishop because he walked into the street on his own accord and almost got hit by a car. He wasn't thrown there. Was just 1 eye short to begin with. He didn't have all this other damage. He just had no eye right away. Clint, comforting the dog as the doctor asks what his name is. He's not his dog. What does it say on the collar? He looks at the collar. It says his name is Arrow. I don't think Clint likes that. He's going to choose something else. And we know from the show that his name becomes Lucky. And I feel like this run really fleshes out Hawkeye's character and sets his tone going forward. Really great intro to who Hawkeye is, how he wants to protect everyone in his building, every animal he comes across that could be in danger. He's just a really good guy. He doesn't need to be an Avenger to do that. It just so happens that he is. But outside of that companionship of the Avengers, he is a stand-up guy on his own, and that's why he's such a great superhero. I really like these stories, and as the episodes go on the Disney Plus show, I'll try and get back to this and make some more comparisons and see how the show is holding up to these comics. As always, thank you for watching, and if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you know when these things are going up. Thanks for watching.